Imagine you are a mighty warrior, renowned, respected, feared by all. You have everything anyone could dream of: wealth, power, influence, and status. But there's one thing you don't have. One thing that no amount of power or prestige can fix. You have leprosy, a disease that isolates you, makes you unclean, and threatens to ruin everything you've built. Now, imagine hearing that your healing might lie in something as simple and unexpected as a river. A river, not even in your homeland, but in the land of your enemies. How would you react? Would you take the leap? Or would you turn away, doubting that something so simple could possibly heal you? This is the story of Naaman, a story about a man of great power who had to confront his pride, his doubts, and his expectations to receive a miracle. And through his journey, we learn a powerful lesson. Sometimes the path to healing and breakthrough is far simpler and humbler than we could ever imagine. Naaman was not just any man. He was the commander of the army of the king of Aram, modern-day Syria. He was a warrior, a man of great skill, courage, and success. His name was known across the land, his victories in battle legendary. Yet, despite all his glory, Naaman had a secret, a terrible, life-altering secret. He was a leper. In his day, leprosy was considered not just a physical disease, but a spiritual curse. It made you unclean, ostracized, and ultimately hopeless. Despite his great position, despite all the wealth and power he held, Naaman could not find a cure for this disease. His leprosy threatened to strip him of everything. But then, one day, a young Israelite girl, who had been captured and taken as a servant, told Naaman's wife about a prophet in Israel who could heal him. And that was the spark that set Naaman's journey into motion. Little did Naaman know, the answer to his deepest need would not come through his royal connections or the vast resources at his disposal. It would come in a way that was completely unexpected, humble, and, for a man of his stature, almost humiliating. Naaman, desperate for a cure, sent word to the king of Israel, asking for help. The king of Israel, upon receiving the letter, panicked. He feared that this request was a trap, that the king of Aram was seeking an excuse to attack Israel. But Elisha, the prophet of God, heard of Naaman's plight and sent a message to the king, telling him to send Naaman to him. Naaman arrived at Elisha's house with great expectations. He had envisioned something grand, something fitting for a man of his status. After all, he was a mighty commander, and surely the prophet would treat him accordingly. But when he arrived, Elisha didn't even come out to meet him. Instead, Elisha sent a messenger to tell Naaman to go and wash himself 7 times in the Jordan River. At first, Naaman was outraged. He was expecting a great, dramatic healing, a grand gesture from the prophet. But instead, he was told to bathe in a muddy river. He was furious. "Are not the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel?" He scoffed. "Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" Naaman, in his pride and frustration, was ready to turn away and abandon the entire idea. But there was something crucial that Naaman had to learn. Healing does not always come through the expected paths. Often, the simplest solutions are the ones that bring the most profound change. It was Naaman's servants who ultimately persuaded him to try what Elisha had instructed. They urged him to humble himself, to set aside his pride, and to follow the prophet's word. Reluctantly, Naaman agreed. He walked down to the Jordan River, dipped himself 7 times as Elisha had told him, and waited. And then, it happened. After the 7th dip, Naaman's skin was completely healed. His leprosy was gone. His skin was as smooth and clean as that of a young boy. The impossible had become possible. The mighty warrior, who once doubted the simplicity of the prophet's instructions, was healed by the power of God, not through grand gestures, but through obedience to a humble, unexpected command. Naaman's healing wasn't just physical, it was spiritual too. He returned to Elisha, not just healed, but transformed. He confessed his faith in the God of Israel, vowing to no longer worship any other gods. The God of Israel, Naaman realized, was the true God, the one who had healed him not just of his disease, but of his pride and self-reliance. Naaman's story teaches us many lessons, but the most profound is this: God often uses the unexpected, the simple, and the humble to accomplish his greatest miracles. Naaman came with high expectations. He wanted healing that was grand and impressive. But God had a different plan, one that required Naaman to set aside his pride and trust in the simplicity of God's instructions. This story shows us that we can't always understand the ways of God. Sometimes He asks us to do things that seem small, humble, or even foolish in our eyes. But it is through these simple acts of obedience that God works miracles. Naaman's pride nearly kept him from receiving what he so desperately needed. It was his humility, his willingness to follow God's simple command, that led to his healing. So, what can we learn from Naaman's story? First, we learn that healing, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, may not come in the way we expect. God doesn't always operate on our terms, but when we are willing to humble ourselves, to trust in God's plan, even when it doesn't make sense, we open ourselves up to miracles. Naaman's healing was not just a miracle for him, it was a revelation of God's power, grace, and love for all people. A Syrian general, an enemy of Israel, was healed through the simple, yet profound, act of obedience. Through Naaman's story, we are reminded that no matter who we are or where we come from, God's grace is available to us all. His ways may be mysterious, but they are always filled with love and mercy.